In the days leading up to Wednesday's protest, President Trump's supporters were not shy about posting plans on social media. Many were just excited about attending the Stop the Steal rally. But now investigators say extremists were using the message boards to coordinate a darker plan. And the violence at the U.S. Capitol was not a spontaneous eruption at all. One piece of evidence backing that theory is the discovery of 2 pipe bombs, reportedly with timers. They were found at both the Republican and Democrat National Committee's headquarters. Joining us now talking more about these developments is J.J. Green, National Security Correspondent with WTOP Radio. J.J., thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me again.
How does the thought of coordination before Wednesday's riots via social media and blogs change this investigation?
Well, it changes everything because this was not handled as if they were expecting this. It wasn't handled as if it was viewed as a conspiracy or a plot. It was handled as if authorities there were expecting people to obey the law and to listen to what they said, but that's not what people did. Listen, this was a situation where back in October, law enforcement sources contacted me and said, listen, check this out. Look at this information, look at this chatter, look at these digital images, and tell us what you think. And so I said, it looks to me like something's about to happen here. At least they're planning something, they're thinking of something. So there has been ample evidence and ample information out there for a while that something was going to be afoot on the 6th of January. And when you look at some of the images that were taken, and you're showing some of them, there are people there with flex cuffs, people there with guns, people there with chemical irritant. And then when you look at the fact that these 2 bombs were found with timers on them, and you ask yourself, why would people in the Congress that are protesting have flex cuffs? And then why would there be timers on these bombs? It's because there's a possibility, at the very least, that someone was thinking about a plot or a conspiracy to take hostages or worse.
There are some out there that might say the protest could have been prevented with different things said by the president at the rally. But my question focuses more on your investigation and your research. Could this have been prevented based on the research that you've done about social media posting?
Well, keep in mind, this wasn't my research. This was really law enforcement people saying, hey, this is what's happening, and you may want to take a look at this and report on this. So there were people who knew this. There were people who were aware of it. I think the problem here was, again, authorities did not think this was going to devolve into what it did. I think they thought these people would just come and maybe vent a little bit and leave, and that's not what happened. It was not entirely preventable because there were some very angry people. And again, you know, law enforcement did an excellent job considering they didn't like this match. Someone else did. And they had to respond to whatever this crowd did. But there were many thousands of people there. And, you know, they just didn't think they were going to break in, maraud and raid and essentially conduct the kind of violence that led to 5 people dying inside the Capitol.
All right, so we've talked a lot about Twitter and Twitter banning the president's account. Are investigators looking at some of the more obscure social media accounts? We're speaking mostly of Parler.
Yeah, what they are looking at are Discord. They're looking at a couple of other different types of smaller social media sites, but they're also looking at the web in general, the open web, not the dark web, but just the open web itself. There's lots and lots of information out there that tell people what's going on. For instance, right now there's a new poster out that says it's got a red background with some different color writing on it that it jumps out at you when you see it. That a source sent to me earlier today. It says refuse to be silent, and it says January 17th is the day, and it's urging people to show up, and it says bringing firearms essentially is optional. So there are lots and lots of different places where you can find this information. It's not being hidden. It's simply out there, and people recognize that authorities may have a hard time figuring out whether this is just them bragging or them being serious and real, like what happened on the 6th of January.
Serious and real, that's something that a lot of people are going to kind of turn their ears to, JJ. Talk about that new date and a little bit more into the thought process that there could be another planned gathering of people with these same thought processes that happened Wednesday at the Capitol.
There's no doubt. It's not just going to be the 17th of January. and this is on me. This is just my thinking and talking to law enforcement sources, and again looking at some of the digital forensics that have been shared with me. There are people that are talking about long-term activity in Washington. There's this discussion that's going on in some of these far-right groups about an Occupy DC movement, very similar to the Occupy movement that was targeted towards big banks some years ago. There's that kind of mentality that's going on. And this poster that I was telling you about a few minutes ago is talking about not just coming to Washington, but they're talking about protest in all 50 states. So they're talking about a long-term type of presence here. But I do think the advantage, though, for authorities is they now know, unfortunately, what happened on the 6th of January. Unfortunately, people died. They realize the consequences of overlooking or underestimating these folks and their plans, but they also realize too that there are a lot of mistakes that this group is making right now, for specifically a lot of these people who showed up in the Capitol doing selfies and posting videos, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that's not going to happen in the future. If these people are serious about what they're talking about, they're going to change some of their tactics and learn. And I think law enforcement is prepared for that. But I can tell you for sure, a thorough investigation by the FBI and other agencies is going on right now into all of this and the possibility of what could happen later.
JJ, you joined me on News Nation Now as things were happening Wednesday. And one thing we didn't know about at that time is, again, we were navigating a lot of unknowns when we spoke there, was the explosive devices. How concerning is it that there was the calculation effort of having timed explosives at two different locations that thankfully were gotten to by our authorities before they detonated?
Well, it's very concerning, and here's why. Because there's the calculus that was going on with those people that placed them. And it's my understanding that an individual from Alabama placed those explosives there, or at least some of them like them were found in a truck belonging to him. He supposedly left and went to the speech on the rally and came back. The question is, why were there timers on these explosives? Because explosives could have been placed and had a different triggering type of mechanism and not timers. The question that investigators are wrestling with, and I'm quite frankly, as well as probably many other people are wondering, was this a situation where these timers were on these weapons to coincide with what was going on inside the Capitol to try to draw law enforcement and first responders perhaps away from the Capitol so that other things, perhaps more heinous and horrendous things than did take place, could happen. For instance, these people with the flex cuffs and the weapons and the chemical irritant, and there were people talking openly about violence, and they were naming names and targets well before this all took place. So that part of the calculus is very concerning, especially when you consider that these pipe bombs, small as they were, had timers on them.
A lot of questions that still need to be answered. JJ, thank you so much.
Pleasure.